She was only 5. No one heard her cries. No one saw the bruises. Her home wasn't a place of love, it was a prison of silence, and the hands that were supposed to protect her were the ones that hurt her most. Every night she stared out the window, whispering to the stars, "Is anyone out there? Can anyone hear me?" No one came, no one knocked, until one day, someone did. This is not just a story about pain. It's a story about a miracle, a moment so small, so quiet. It could have been missed, but it wasn't, and because of that, everything changed. She didn't just survive what was meant to destroy her. She rose from it. She turned her scars into strength, and today, her voice shakes the world. Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you won't just remember her name. You'll remember how one small act of kindness can change everything. Forever, she was just 5 years old, but her eyes had already seen more pain than most hearts could carry in a lifetime. Her name was Ava. And while other kids her age were learning to tie their shoes and laughing over spilled juice, Ava was learning something far darker: how to hide her bruises, how to hold in her screams, how to pretend that everything was okay when nothing was. To the world, she was a quiet little girl, reserved, shy, always looking down, always clutching a war. Now teddy bear with missing buttons and stitched ears, but behind those silent eyes was a story no child should ever have to live. You see, Ava's mother wasn't just troubled. She was broken in ways that turned love into violence. Every morning, Ava woke not with the warmth of breakfast or hugs, but with the sound of screaming, plates breaking, doors slamming, the cold sting of a hand across her cheek, for no reason at all. Sometimes it was because Ava spilled water. Sometimes it was because she didn't answer fast enough. And sometimes it was because there was no reason. Her mother just needed someone to punish, and Ava was always there. She never understood why the woman who gave her life was the same one trying to crush it. Her father was long gone, disappeared when Ava was still in diapers. No grandparents, no siblings, just a small apartment, silence, and the echo of pain in every room. She didn't cry out anymore. At first she did. At first she screamed. At first she begged. But eventually she realized no one was coming. So she learned to go quiet. She learned to take the hits, wipe the tears, and go sit in her corner, hoping today would end faster than yesterday. But every night she'd look out the window, 5 years old, sitting in the dark, wondering if there was anyone out there who could see her. Some nights she whispered to the stars, "Please, just one person, please, just let someone see me." The world kept moving, cars drove by, neighbors smiled politely in passing. Teachers asked her to speak louder but didn't look closer. Social workers missed the signs, everyone was too busy, and Ava, she was disappearing, day by day, until one night, something changed. It was a cold winter evening, the kind where the sky feels heavy and the air presses down like a warning. Ava sat near the window again, hugging that same teddy bear, its one glass eye reflecting the moonlight. Her mother had fallen asleep drunk on the couch, a bottle in one hand, a cigarette in the other. The TV flickered with static, and the whole house smelled like smoke and silence. And then, a sound, 3 knocks, soft but sharp. Ava turned. Another knock. She stood up, barefoot, afraid, unsure. Slowly, she crept to the door and peeked through the hole. No one, but then, a voice, warm, gentle, older. "Sweetheart, are you okay in there?" A woman's voice, calm, different. Ava didn't speak. She just froze. "I'm from across the hall." The voice continued. I've heard things. I've seen bruises. I brought you something." Ava stood on her toes and opened the door just a crack. And on the other side stood a gray-haired woman with soft eyes and a warm scarf. She held out a small blanket, purple, soft, new, and a sandwich wrapped in foil. No questions, no demands, just kindness. That was the first night Ava took her first bite of hope. The woman's name was Mrs. Keller. She didn't call the police that night. She didn't rush in with anger. She just knelt beside the door every evening after that. She'd leave food, a smile, a note, and slowly Ava started to smile back. It wasn't a rescue, not yet, but it was the beginning of something Ava had never known. Someone cared, and sometimes that's where miracles begin, not with lightning, not with angels, but with quiet persistence and a heart that refuses to look away. Mrs. Keller started visiting Ava's school, quietly, carefully. She asked questions the teachers hadn't dared to ask. She made calls. She paid attention, and slowly, Ava's name started to echo in the right places. But change doesn't come easy, and miracles don't always walk through the front door. There was still more pain ahead, more fear, but for the first time in Ava's life, she wasn't walking through it alone. There was still more pain ahead, more fear, but for the first time in Ava's life, she wasn't walking through it alone, and that made all the difference. Every evening, Mrs. Keller returned, not to rescue Ava like a superhero in a cape, but to show her what it meant to matter. She never pried too hard, she never pushed too fast, she simply showed up, every single day, and for a little girl who had only ever known fists and silence, presence felt like a miracle. At school, things began to shift. One day, a counselor gently asked Ava about her home, not in a way that made her freeze, not in a way that made her ashamed, just, softly, "Is there anything you want to tell me, Ava?" And for the first time, Ava didn't look away. She didn't say much, just 3 quiet words, "I get scared." That was all it took. The system, finally awakened, began moving. Social workers started asking questions they should have asked years ago. A teacher reported the bruises that had been overlooked. And the voice of a 5-year-old girl, so small the world almost missed it, began to echo louder. But Ava's mother, she knew the storm was coming, and storms make dangerous people even more dangerous. The night before the scheduled home visit from Child Protective Services, Ava's mother erupted. She screamed at the world, at the walls, at the alcohol in her veins. But most of all, she screamed at Ava. "You told them, didn't you, you little snake? You ruined everything." She grabbed Ava's arm, hard, furious, unforgiving, and then something unimaginable happened. Ava looked her mother in the eye. And didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She didn't tremble. She whispered one sentence that would change everything. "Someone sees me now." Her mother froze. For the first time, Ava's voice had power in it. Not volume, not rage. Just quiet certainty. "Someone sees me now." And that shook the monster more than any scream ever could. The next morning, CPS arrived, with police, with social workers, with Mrs. Keller standing quietly at the curb. Ava was holding her teddy bear, the same one with the stitched-up ear. But this time, she wasn't hiding behind it. She was holding it tight, like a trophy of survival. Her mother screamed, threw things, shouted threats that echoed through the hallway, but Ava didn't look back. She walked forward, toward light, toward people who cared, toward a future she couldn't yet see but finally believed might exist. She didn't know what was coming next. Foster care, court, a new home, everything felt like a storm, but somehow, in the middle of all that noise, she felt still because the worst was behind her. The monster had lost its power. That was the moment Ava's miracle stopped being a moment and became a movement. The system, slow as it was, finally opened its eyes. A judge took special interest. A counselor with a soft voice and kind eyes worked with Ava week after week. And Mrs. Keller, she didn't disappear. She visited every weekend, brought books, smiles, warm blankets. She became the family Ava never had. Healing doesn't come all at once. There were nights Ava still woke up screaming. Mornings when she couldn't speak. Days when the past felt too loud to dream about the future. But every time she fell, someone caught her. Every time she broke, someone helped her piece herself back together. And Ava, she kept showing up. She started to draw, first stick figures, then bright, bold colors, then images of girls with capes flying above dark houses with tiny windows. She didn't say much about them, but her therapist knew exactly what they meant. She was rewriting her story. At 6 years old, Ava stood in front of her class and read a poem. It was shaky, her voice cracked, but she read it anyway. It was about a star who lost its shine, but found its glow again when someone believed it was still worth lighting up the sky. When she finished, her classmates clapped, and Mrs. Keller, sitting in the back row, wiped away a single tear. Ava didn't just survive, she started to shine. The miracle wasn't just that she escaped. The real miracle was that she kept her heart open in a world that tried to shut it down. Most people never knew her full story. Most people just saw a quiet girl with big eyes and a soft voice. But those who looked deeper saw something far more powerful, a survivor. A fighter, a soul that refused to be erased. Years later, when Ava grew older, she didn't forget. She didn't bury the past to pretend it didn't happen. She turned it into fuel. She began volunteering. Speaking, telling stories of children who go unseen, unheard, forgotten. And every time she spoke, she started the same way. My name is Ava. I was just 5 years old, and I was broken, but someone saw me, and that changed everything. She spoke those words not with bitterness, not with tears, but with strength, the kind of strength that doesn't shout, but hums quietly in your chest long after the voice has stopped. Her audience was silent. Moved, some clutched tissues, some closed their eyes, imagining the little girl she once was, and some, those who had been through their own storms, nodded because they understood. Ava didn't share her story for sympathy. She shared it so others could find their own voice buried beneath years of silence. Because her miracle didn't end with being rescued, it began there, and then she became the miracle for others. She dedicated her teenage years to helping kids who reminded her of herself. The quiet ones, the bruised ones, the ones who laughed too little and flinched too fast. Ava volunteered at shelters, read books to children in group homes, and eventually trained to become a youth advocate. But she never forgot Mrs. Keller, the woman who knelt at her door when the world looked away. Ava visited her often. They would sip tea, laugh softly, and sit in peaceful silence. One day, Ava brought a gift. It was a framed photo of herself at age 5, clutching that now teddy bear, and beside it a quote, "You don't need a cape to save someone, just the courage to care when others don't." Mrs. Keller cried, not because she was sad, but because in all her years, she had never imagined that one small act of kindness would ripple so far. But Ava's story didn't stop at healing. It became her mission. She studied social work in college, spoke at national conferences. Her voice, once barely a whisper, now carried across rooms full of leaders, lawmakers, and educators. She didn't just talk about her pain, she talked about possibility. She proposed laws for earlier child abuse detection, created awareness campaigns that trained teachers to recognize signs, and built online platforms for children to speak anonymously and safely. Ava knew the system had flaws. She had lived through them, but instead of hating it, she rebuilt it piece by piece, not with anger, but with purpose, because she believed something most people forgot, that broken children don't stay broken if someone just shows up. Years later, Ava published a book, a memoir. It was titled, "Someone Sees Me." It became a beacon for lost souls, for children in pain, for adults still carrying childhood wounds, and for survivors who never knew how to speak their truth. The book wasn't just a bestseller, it was a lifeline. Thousands of letters poured in, from mothers who had once hurt their children and now wanted to heal, from teachers who finally saw the quiet girl in their classroom, from grown men who, for the first time in their lives, said out loud, "That was me too." Ava read every word. Some nights she cried, some nights she sat in silence, but every letter reminded her why she never gave up, why she kept going, why the little girl who once stared out a broken window, whispering to the stars, had become a woman who now lit the sky for others. And as her work grew, Ava started something bigger. She opened a foundation called the Purple Blanket Project, named after the first gift Mrs. Keller ever gave her. The project delivered soft purple blankets to children in shelters across the country, along with notes that read, "You are not invisible. Someone sees you. Someone cares." Because Ava remembered how one small act of love, one blanket, one sandwich, one voice, had shifted her world, and now she was passing that forward thousands of times over. But even with all her success, she never chased fame. She didn't care about the spotlight. Her dream was simple, that no child would ever sit alone in the dark, wondering if anyone could hear their cry. And perhaps the most beautiful part of Ava's story is that she never let what was done to her define who she became. She could have grown bitter, she could have become hard, she could have shut the world out and called it protection, but instead, she chose love. She chose to heal, she chose to speak, and in doing so, she gave permission to thousands of others to do the same, because that's the real power of a miracle. It doesn't just save a life, it transforms it. So that life can save others. Ava is no longer the little girl hiding behind the door. She's the voice behind the podium, the hand on someone's shoulder, the calm whisper in a storm. And somewhere tonight, there's a little girl looking out a window, wondering if anyone sees her. And thanks to Ava, someone will. Years passed, but Ava never forgot who she once was. She never forgot the cold floor beneath her feet, the sting of a slap, or the silent prayers she whispered to a sky she wasn't sure was listening. But she also never forgot the knock at the door, the blanket, the sandwich, the woman who didn't look away, because sometimes a miracle doesn't arrive with thunder or trumpets. Sometimes it comes gently, wrapped in kindness, disguised as an ordinary moment, and yet it rewrites an entire life. Ava grew into a woman who refused to let her scars define her. She didn't cover them, she wore them, not to gain sympathy, but to show others that healing is possible. That even the most broken soul can rebuild from the ashes if someone dares to believe in them. She once lived a story no child should ever have to live. Now, she writes stories no child should ever have to live again. And while she may never forget the pain of her past, she turned it into power. That's the kind of miracle she became. Not a miracle that erases the past, but one that reclaims it, reshapes it, and uses it to light the way for others still lost in the dark. So if you're watching this right now, and you're that little girl, or that broken boy, or that silent soul who's learned to smile through the pain, hear this: you are not invisible, you are not forgotten. You are not unloved. Someone sees you, and maybe, just maybe, this is your miracle knocking. Ava's story is proof, not that life is fair, but that even the most unfair beginnings can lead to the most powerful endings. Because she was just 5, broken by her mother, but saved by a miracle, and now she is the miracle for thousands, for millions, for the world.